Good Saturday morning, everybody. It is, as I adjust my headset here, there we go. It is Saturday morning. It is almost 7:30 in the morning on this Saturday, the first, this is a Saturday, I should say, of Memorial Day weekend. Yes, Memorial Day weekend is right now. Memorial Day is actually this Monday. Surprisingly, nobody saw it coming because of what's been going on. But thankfully, I guess, with the president coming out now and saying certain things like, hey, we got to do this, we got to do that, or else I'm going to step in and make sure it is done. A lot of governors are saying, okay, fine, we'll do this, we'll let this happen, blah, blah, blah. It's because basically it's because I think, honestly, just real quickly, I think the president is trying to make the governors realize, look, we're heading into summer. A lot of you are heading into a massive heat wave, and basically, heat is the essential ingredient, or one of them anyway, to downplaying this whole virus that's been infecting everybody over the past several months. So, I mean, here in California, we're going to be getting a excessive heat advisory because I think the highest they said the heat could go, if I can look it up here real quickly. I think the highest they said the heat could go. Um, well, today the high is going to be about 88, and then tomorrow's 95. The highest, the staying at times throughout out is going to be on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. Tuesday is going to be 106, Wednesday 109, Thursday 108. Now, sometimes um, those temperatures kind of retract. They kind of are in flux a little bit. I mean, just yesterday, they said that Wednesday or Tuesday was supposed to be 111. So it all depends. But yeah, apparently everybody is retracting. But apparently, the president is making sure that, hey, some things open up in time for the Memorial Day weekend, and at least get back to some kind of normalcy as we head into the summer. And again, he probably realizes, look, the heat is an essential ingredient to getting rid of this disease. I mean, heck, the CDC is now saying that, surfaces like my desk here, aren't as threatening as originally first thought when it comes to the disease. And I've been drinking this most of the morning to kind of keep myself ready and keep myself going. It used to be, I think, right about here or something. I've been drinking it to keep going. But anyway, let's get into the video of discussion here. Something I wanted to try to do back on the 17th, but couldn't because of reasons beyond my control. And that is, we're going to talk about shipping in animation. We're going to talk about that more specifically, guys. The shipping. Sorry about that. Get that back up here. The shipping of characters visually or implied in various animated media. Yes. Okay, so if you guys are wondering what I mean by that, and it's really simple what I mean. It's really simple what I mean. Basically, if you grew up with animation throughout, the one thing about animation, especially with an animated series, is the romantic shipping of characters, whether it's in your face, or whether it's visually, I should say, in your face or implied in some manner. In other words, excuse me, I don't know where that came from. Forgive that. But like I said, whether it's visually, in your face throughout, or it's implied in some manner. In fact, I said it here in the description. Let me read off what the description says. And I quote, this is what I just typed up. One thing about animation, especially animated series, is the romantic shipping of characters, whether it's visually right in your face or implied in some manner throughout the series. Romantic shipping of characters has always been has always been part of any animated series for decades. Um, I will discuss that on the Saturday Memorial Day weekend morning. Yeah, because that is pretty much the thing. With a, again, that's the thing. It doesn't matter what kind of an animated series it is. It doesn't matter if it's a Disney series, a Warner Bros. Series, a series based on a toy franchise, an original idea. The romantic shipping of characters has always been part of it throughout various decades, especially the decades I grew up in. And, you know, again, whether it's visually implied, or not visually implied, but whether it's visually right in your face to where you pretty much know, yeah, these characters are an item, they're together, you know, um, there's no matter, there's no, not no matter, but there's no way getting around that. Whether it's that or it's implied in some manner throughout the series that there might be a romantic attraction between certain characters or shipping between certain characters. It's just been something that's been part of animated series for many, many generations and many, many decades. Again, like I said, it doesn't matter exactly what show it is, who produces or who is responsible for the creation of the show. It's always been a part of media. It's always been a part of it. So whether or not you support the ship or you don't, depending on how it's presented, it's just something that you realize is going to be part of the series no matter what. So with that said, let's talk about some examples here. Especially for me growing up in the 80s, there was a lot of 80s and early to mid 90s and even late 90s, but mostly throughout the 80s and early to mid 90s. There was a lot of shipping that was visually in your face, as well as basically um, implied in some manner throughout the series. For example, visually in your face, I'll give you a good example here. Heathcliff and the Cadillac Cats. Now, Heathcliff had had two other series before this. He had been paired up with Dingbat, and he had been paired up with Marmaduke. Here, he had been paired up with a new original series called the Cadillac Cats, originally known as Cats and Company. And being paired with the Cadillac Cats basically allowed for some new characters to come into the fold and really help the Heathcliff series, or this interpretation of Heathcliff, to stand on its own 2 feet. But when it comes to the Cadillac Cats, almost visually right off the bat, you were given a romance that, whether you agreed with it or you didn't, you knew was basically going to be a main part of the Cadillac Cats no matter what. And that was the romance of the characters Riff Raff, a small brown alley cat, and Cleo, a statuesque blonde-haired cat that lived in a music store. And again, some people may or may not like that because of the fact that one was bigger than the other, that being Cleo bigger than Riff Raff. But the main message that we got throughout the series is love, that when it comes to love, it doesn't matter how big you are, how tall you are, what your life, you know, what your intentions sometimes could be, or stuff like that. That if you have a good heart and everything, that's all that matters. Now, I know that probably didn't make any sense, but you kind of get the idea that I'll give you an example. You take a look at what WWE is doing. One of the good things they're doing right now so far, unless they mess it up, is the whole Otis and Mandy romance on SmackDown. You would think someone like Mandy Rose would not go for someone like Otis, but they're showing that love can happen no matter who you are, and that sometimes looks on everything. It's what's inside that counts, you know? And, that's what we're getting with this storyline in WWE right now. And it's kind of like what's going on with, and that's kind of like what you get with Heathcliff and the Cadillac Cats, especially Cleo and Riff Raff. That it doesn't matter if Cleo's the statuesque one and Riff Raff's the small one. It's what's on the inside that counts. It's what's matter. It's what's on the inside that counts. It's what matters on the inside. And that's basically what you get. It's basically around that manner. That it's what's on the inside that counts, not what's on the outside. Another romance, of course, which was pretty much a mainstay when it came to the series, was with the main series itself, Heathcliff, and his romance with Sonia. Now, here's the thing about Heathcliff and Sonia. Some would probably think Heathcliff shouldn't even be with Sonia because, like some other characters of the past, she's always easily swayed or swooned by that character. And it takes Heathcliff to basically do something to win her back or something like that. So, but usually he does. Usually he does win her back and stuff. And again, despite how Heathcliff is presented as a bit of a mischiefy troublemaker, for a character like Sonia, she doesn't see that. What she sees is what's on the inside, and what she sees is a good heart. And that's all that matters to her, is the fact that Heathcliff's a good person. And whether you agree with it or you don't, it's a ship, it's a romance that kind of helps carry the series at times. Basically, I'll put it this way. When you look at Heathcliff and you look at Riff Raff, you look at two characters that paired up with the female counterparts that they are paired up with them because those female counterparts, Sonia and Cleo, help balance those characters out, kind of help keep them in their place, if you know what I mean. Now, Heathcliff and the Cadillac Cats wasn't the only time a romance was shown. Now, Heathcliff and the Cadillac Cats was a visual, example of a romance being like right in your face. But as I also said, sometimes a romance can be implied. It's ironic that Netflix/DreamWorks interpretation of She-Ra, which has been given mixed critical opinions throughout, recently came to an end. And one of the critiques that it gets is its basically huge difference between it and the original 83 to 85 or 85 to 87 series. Now, here's the thing though, when it came to the original 85 to 87 series, just like with the new one, there was romance. But the big difference though is it was romance that was implied between characters, not really seen as much. For example, the character of Bo. The original Bo in She-Ra Princess of Power in the mid 80s, it was implied that he had a thing for Adora as well as She-Ra. He basically had a thing for both of them. And then she, in turn, Shira, if not mostly Adora, had a thing for Bo. But it was never visually, but we did not see anything visually, in our faces that would show that there was a romance between them or a romance between them. What we got was an implication, and something that was implied that there was an attraction, maybe a little bit of a romance blossoming between Bo and Adora, aka Shira. That's all we got. Now, some would say, well, Adora Shira was actually in a romance with that Seahawk guy or whatever his name was. And that is true. I think that's the only true ship we got, but it wasn't seen as much. It wasn't like I said, it wasn't like a Heathcliff Cleo, a Heathcliff Sonia, or Riff Raff Cleo. It wasn't like that. It was more like when Seahawk would show up, they would do something to touch upon the romance between Shira and Seahawk. But that was it. Throughout the rest of the series, it was always indicated that there was something between Adora and Bo and Shira and Bo. But when, like I said, when the Seahawk character came around, they would kind of at least do something to remind us of that. And that is the truth. However, She-Ra isn't the only series. Now, and in He-Man, it was pretty much implied. I don't know if it was visually shown at times, but if it visually implied, not visually, but it was implied, I should say, visually and throughout the series, that there was something between Teela and He-Man, or Teela and Prince Adam. There was always something there between the two. But besides a few moments throughout the series, nothing was really capitalized on. Nothing was really, how do I put this? Nothing was really showcased the way it should be to indicate that there was something romantic between Adam and Teela, or He-Man and Teela. Like I said, you had your moments, and that was about it. But you didn't have anything else besides that. So He-Man and She-Ra, the original 80s series, are good examples of saying, hey, there is something here between these characters, but we're not going to go any further than that. And maybe with an exception here and there with a character that may appear off and on. But with established characters, like I said, aka Adora and Bo, it was visually implied throughout the series, but it was never really given a proper focused episode or evolution to it during the show's run. That's pretty much the truth there. Now, other 80s series that I grew up with kind of indicated this as kind of did a hybrid of this as well. I mean, ironically, right now on Facebook, there's a watch party going on for classic Hasbro and Saturday morning cartoons on the 80s page, fan page, something like that, in the 80s fan page or whatever. And G.I. Joe, to me, was probably the first indication growing up as a kid that there was a romance between characters. In fact, when you look at the later interpretations, especially with those interpretations based in the same continuity and generation being aimed at adults, it's pretty much really kind of focused on, or at least really implied, if you know what I mean, that there's something going on. And you might ask, well, how is that possible with G.I. Joe? It's possible because of characters like Duke and Scarlet, Flint and Lady J. And even if you count the movie, Lieutenant Falcon, and Jinx. But mostly, if you look at the series before that, it's Lady J, Flint, and it's Scarlet and Duke. And you could definitely see that throughout the series. You could definitely see the moments that are there, the visually, like, because here's the thing: the romance between these characters, Duke and Scarlet, Lady J and Flint, even though it's not like always in your face and everything, all that, it's heavily implied. It's heavily implied that there's a romance there. There's an attraction, because they're always next to each other. One's always stepping in for the other. There are sometimes, if you want half of Scarlet or Lady J, and no offense when I say that, but you have your moments, and the moments are more strongly implied, heavily implied, than, let's say, He-Man and She-Ra, because I think they wanted to basically establish um, a bit of a hybrid with GI Joe, and that hybrid was, yes, it's a series based, it's a fictional fantasy sci-fi military series, uh, meant meant to sell toys and mostly aimed at boys, with a few occasions to be aimed at girls because of the female leads. But they also wanted to show a bit of that, but making it a hybrid series in some way. They wanted to show that in the military, romance can happen, a romance can occur, and that's kind of what you get with characters like Duke and Scarlet and Lady J and Flint. That's flat out the truth, no matter what. Heck, you even look at the original Thundercats, back in the 80s, when Rankin Bass brought that series out. And despite how some people might say it wasn't visually in your face, but it was kind of implied throughout that Chitara, had some kind of attraction with either um, Tigra or, believe it or not, Leo. There was always something. It's like you could sense that there was something there between her and Tigra, or her and Leo. But it was never really built upon after that. It was never really, built upon after that. It was just implied. It wasn't like strongly implied like with G.I. Joe, but it was implied throughout various times in the series that there was something between Chitara, a Cheetah, if you will, whatever you call her, and Lion-O. Yeah, Lion-O, not Leo, but Lion-O, or her and Tigra. So there was something there. Now, as we got through the 80s into the 90s, we had other series as well. Disney, I think, is probably the most guilty of this. A good example with Disney is you take a look at a variety of the Disney afternoon shows, especially shows that originally started on Saturday mornings, but went to the Disney afternoon to finish up the series. Shows like, let's say, the Gummy Bears. Now, even though in the Gummy Bears, it's pretty much, how do I put this? It's pretty much a foregone conclusion in many people's eyes that Sunny Gummy has a thing for Gusto, or she has a thing for Buddy Barbic that she meets later on. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion in a lot of people's minds. And that is no doubt true. But to me, in just my opinion, I've always thought that had Disney decided to continue the series in some manner and maybe age the characters along the lines, that they were going to do something with Sunny and Cubby. Because when you think about it, despite how you might feel about Sunny and Cubby living in the same glen with the other gummies and kind of being looked at as siblings, there's no doubt that Disney probably had other plans for them, because of the fact that why would you have them hang out all the time with each other, despite the fact that Sunny's going through this, this development of, as she gets older, she's going to want to do different things. She's going to want to be her own bear. She's going to want to be her own character. She's not going to want to, hang out with Sunny. I mean, not Sunny, but with with someone like Cubby as much as she used to. But yet, she always does. In fact, in one of the final episodes of the series, she ends up deciding to go and play capture the flag with Cubby over maybe doing some other stuff, like let's say helping Custo finish his sculpture on her when she was aging, because of the fact that one of the villainous characters in the series, Lady Bane, had stolen a piece of her hair to kind of keep her youth, and in the process take the youth away from Sunny. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, check out the episode Rocking Chair Bear. You'll get the idea there. But yeah, basically, um, that was the. But yeah, basically, Sunny chose to go and play with Cubby. Another good example of possibly something being planned between the two, in my opinion, was in one of the earlier episodes called A Gummy in a Gilded Cage. Cubby wants to immediately go save Sunny. He's like, I'm going to go rescue her. And it's like, Gruffy has to pull him back and say, whoa, wait a minute, kid. And then when he finally does go across like a little makeshift bridge to the cage that has Sunny held within, the first thing Sunny does when she sees Cubby doing this, and then after, basically one of the first things she does when Cubby finally unlocks the door to get her out, she does this, like the My Hero kind of gesture, and they kind of embrace Ace, and then he holds her hand while he guides her across. The point is, no matter how you look at it, they had something planned. Obviously, in my opinion, they had something planned between, Cubby and Sunny. There's no getting around that. But because of the fact that obviously Cubby was smaller than her and was a little bit more childish, I will give him that. They decided, okay, well, we can't do that right now. Tommy is definitely out of the question because of the way he is. Who can we get maybe to put a little bit of romance into the gummies besides the human allies? Oh, I know. How about, Sunny develops an attraction, a crush on Gusto, and then later on she meets this Barbie girl that's about, I wouldn't say the same age, but basically about the same size as her, and she develops a crush on him. I'm just saying they probably realized, maybe it would come off wrong if they decided to do a romance between Cubby and Sunny right then and there. But I truly believe, had the series continued, that there's no doubt they would have probably done something, especially if they would have aged the characters up, in my opinion. I mean, if you don't believe me, check out, well, I wouldn't say check out DeviantArt. You could check out DeviantArt if you want to, but if you look around Google, from what I understand, if you Google NFSW Sunny and Cubby gummy pics, there are, believe it or not, from what I understand, a true variety of NFSW pics with these characters doing their thing with each other, if you know what I mean. Because and the reason for that, in my opinion, I should say, is because obviously others kind of feel the same way I do, that yeah, Cubby was small. It doesn't mean he wasn't younger than Sunny. He might have been maybe around the same age. It's just she was more like the Cleo Cat character in the Cadillac Cat. She was more statuesque, and that as the old saying goes, which is true, women/girls mature faster than boys, even if they're at the same age. So, again, that is indeed true. But the thing is, Gummy Bears wasn't the only one. Heck, a series that I'm surprised wasn't considered for Disney Afternoon was The Wuzzles. And obviously, right off the bat, even with the intro, you pretty much were given the idea that there was an attraction between the characters of Bumble Lion and Butterbear. You were given that right off the bat. So there's that. Despite them trying to do a love triangle with Hippopotamus, and Bumble Lion, because Hoppo had a thing for Bumble Lion, but he had a thing for Butterbear. Go figure. Uh, but again, it wasn't the only series. Uh, DuckTales actually didn't just go the implied way, they actually went both. They went visual and implied, mostly visual than anything else, especially later on when we got the characters of Fenton Crackshell, who became the superhero Robocop like character Gizmo Duck, and his love interest, Gadget D. So that was kind of cool for them to do. And even though that romance wasn't like the main focus of DuckTales, anytime they had an episode centered around them, the romance would play a pivotal role. From what I can remember. Now, one of the big ones, in my opinion, is Chippendale Rescue Rangers. Being a big fan of them, to me, Chippendale Rescue Rangers is probably the best example of a implied romance between characters, if not sometimes visually in your face. Because Rangers was Chippendale trying to vie for the attention and love of Gadget Hackwrench. And throughout the series, you would have various moments where they'd find a way to get Gadget in the mood and probably try to take that opportunity to win her over. Like the first episode, we kind of get the idea like, oh, there's something, because the first episode, calories not included, you would think, oh, did Chip get a girlfriend or something like that? Nope. You find out the moment Chip's going to go in for a kiss, here comes Dale. He's taking advantage of, hey, Gadget's in the mood. I'm going to make my move. I'm going to strike while the handle is hot. And then he comes to interrupt the possible romance from happening, so he can try to get the romance himself between himself and Gadget. And that's something that happens throughout the series to get these various love interests for the characters as well. For example, one of the other first episodes was called Adventures in Squirrel Sitting, and you get this character known as Tammy develop a huge crush on Chip to the point that I wouldn't say it became obsessive. It became kind of obsessive a little bit, to the point that she was willing to go get a stolen artifact away from one of the nemesis, one of the main nemesis, Fat Cat, to prove her worth to Chip, because she felt, Tammy that is, that Chip was more invested in Gadget, and then by seeing that, believed Gadget was trying to prove herself to Chip. But it takes Gadget herself to tell Tammy, look, I'm not trying to do that. I don't know where you're getting that idea from. And if you really want to, and basically the message that we get in the episode via Gadget to Tammy is, if you want someone to like you, just be yourself. Don't try to be something you're not, which is a good message. And it does leave the door open for a possible romance to occur. Because one of the last things that happens at the end of the episode is Tammy kisses Chip right on the cheek. Eek. Even after he kind of offers her to be on the team, and she says, she'll wait, but she still thinks he's cute. And then she kisses him. Now, to contract that, I wouldn't say, to contract that or counteract that, that right there was at the start of the series, but to counteract that later on, and not to leave Dale out in the cold, if you know what I mean, Disney decided, hey, you know what? We gave Chip a potential love interest outside of Gadget in the first episodes. The series is almost over. Let's do the same with Dale, and that's what they did. They ended up giving Dale a character in the name of Foxglove the Bat. And what's interesting about this is Foxglove fell for Dale while she was still working for this witch named Renifred, or this wannabe witch known as Renifred, that was gathering all these different ingredients to try to become a real witch. And it would take being around Dale and the Rescue Rangers, mostly Dale, to get Foxglove to realize the truth about her friend Renifred and turn over to the side of the Rangers. Now, what's interesting, though, about the episode, which is Good Times, Bad Times, is unlike Adventures in Squirrel Sitting, it doesn't take Chip later on and basically the confrontation of his friends right in front of his face of, hey, you broke this girl's heart. She likes you. What's wrong with you, kind of deal. Open your head, open your mind, stop being hard headed, and realize, hey, this girl has an attraction to you. You hurt her feelings. You need to go apologize. Which, after being confronted by his friends, he realizes, shoot, I did blow up on her. I didn't see. Basically, Chip realizes, oh, I kind of didn't see that. I kind of didn't realize that. And some can perceive that as, Chip was more focused on solving cases, or Chip didn't want to lose his opportunity of being with Gadget. That's the reason he acted the way he did towards Tammy. But anyway, getting back to Good Times, Bad Times with Foxglove, basically the big difference between that episode and Adventures in Squirrel Sitting is that even though Dale was kind of shying off a little bit with Foxglove, it would actually take one moment in the episode for him to be like, I think the light bulb just went off in his head, going like, wait a minute, this girl actually likes me more than I can imagine. Hey, there might be something here. And, it just goes from there. And it leaves the door open, just like Adventures in Squirrel Sitting, that something may have happened with Dale and Foxglove, and maybe they became an item. Who knows? I do know that Ian Brill, who wrote the Rescue Rangers comic books for Boom Studios several years ago, is obviously a fan of him. Is obviously a hardcore fan himself, because he continued that romance between the characters in an official Disney product or licensed product. He continued that romance in some capacity in an official Disney product. It wasn't fanfic or anything like, let's say, Death of a Comedian or of Mice and Mayhem. It was an official Disney product. So he continued on through that. Now, Rescue Rangers wouldn't be the only one either. Tailspin that followed later on also had a romance. And it was implied, if not visually. Now, it was visually implied at times. It was visually implied, and sometimes right in your face. They just would not admit it. And that was between the main characters of Baloo and Rebecca, which their chemistry, what I'm trying to say is the chemistry between them was actually based off the chemistry and attraction of Rebecca Donaldson and Sam Malone from Cheers. Yeah, that's how, believe it or not, Sam Malone and Rebecca Donaldson from Cheers were the inspiration for Baloo and Rebecca Cunningham's in Tailspin, which is why throughout the series you had basically not in your face, but you had visual implication that there was something going on between the two besides just being BFFs, which they did officially become. They actually did some character development and growth for them to get there. It didn't take long or anything. They started out as an employee, and then that blossomed into a friendship. And okay, that's cool. And you saw it develop throughout the series. But you always also saw that there was an attraction of romance between the two. A good example, probably the prime example in my opinion, is the episode A Star is Torn. This really, to me, set the tone of saying Baloo and Rebecca have an attraction to that. Baloo and Rebecca, mostly Rebecca, has fallen for Baloo. She has fallen in love with him. And you see this just the way she reacts at times, to him saying certain things that, he doesn't mean. He has to go and apologize to her and say, look, you took it out of context. I didn't really mean to say that. You just got to say these kind of things to make these starlets, these celebrities, whatever, happy. So, there's moments like that. So, he has to correct himself at times. But again, there are moments throughout the series that pretty much indicate that. There are moments throughout. And Again, to me, A Star is Torn is probably the best example of of this romance being visually probably the only example. This attraction, this romance, this shipping of these characters being visually in your face in this series. Now, besides that, we also had basically Darkwing Duck, which was one of the most popular series and franchises Disney did in the Disney afternoon. And Darkwing Duck, even though it took time throughout the series, he developed a romance, an official romance, with one Morgana Macabre, who was originally a villain, and she became a good guy, became his girlfriend, and is one of the only individuals outside of Goslin and Honker and Launchpad to know Darkwing Duck and Drake Mallard are one and the same. So, anyway, long story short, Darkwing and Morgana's romance is definitely played upon throughout the series, depending on the situation. Whether it's in the two-parter Justice Ducks, which is a Justice League parody, or basically an origin parody of the Justice League, or in Monsters or Us, where pretty much the Morgana's family, which is a bunch of monsters, are like, especially the father, is like, what are you talking about? My daughter's dating a normal or a living being, a non-monster. It's played upon there. It's played upon through various other episodes as well. Heck, they even imply, not strongly, but they kind of tease. They kind of, how do I put this? They kind of imply, tease, kind of like set the foundation, if you will, of something going on between um, Honker and Goslin, but that's about it. They don't go any further than that. They don't go any further than that, but they do play upon it. They play upon it. They lay some kind of foundation that, yeah, that when these two get older, they may become more than just friends. Now, Darkwing Duck wasn't the only one. We had Goof Troop, which had Peg married to Pete, and Goofy gets a variety of love interests. But what was really kind of a strong, strange, implied shipping of characters, especially for Disney, was of Peg and Goofy. Peg, even though Peg was married to Pete, who pretty much a lot of fans, even to this day, are like, why did this woman marry this guy again? It doesn't make sense. What does she see in him? What does she see in him? But again, one of the strangest examples of shipping between characters, especially in a Disney series, is of that of Peg, who's married to Pete, and Goofy, who's a single dad. And just the way she gropes him, she hugs him, if you will. Heck, there's one episode, I think it's called Goofing Up the Social Ladder, where Goofy accidentally or inconveniently, well, not inconveniently, but how do I say this? He unconsciously, not that he's knocked out or anything, but he unconsciously, says certain things that gives Peg ideas, to the point that after he does that, she would kiss him. The first time he said something about, you know, doing something in person and everything, because the story of the episode is Peg wants to, meet this head socialite lady to get into this club, and so she can get more clients to sell houses and mansions and stuff like that, because she's a real estate agent, one of the top ones, from what I understand, in the series. So she wants to become part of the social club so she can probably get more deals. And she's going through all these different obstacles to, to meet this lady, and through various opportunities. And there are various times in the episode where, like I say, Goofy will unexpectedly, even to him, unbeknownst, that's the what I'm looking for. Unbeknownst, even to him, would come up with the idea that Peg would take to heart, and she would end up kissing Goofy as a result. She would kiss him on the forehead the first time he did that, and then the second time he comes up unbeknownst with an idea for her to try to get in. She does something that really surprised a lot of people. She kisses him on the lips. I am not joking. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of people were clapping when this happened because that's who they feel Peg should have been with. And that's a more natural kind of a attraction between the characters. But yeah, she ends up kissing Goofy on the lips. And again, let me remind you, she's a married woman in the series. For Disney, something like that, happened was amazing, was a surprise. Now, Disney also had Bonkers, which I think is one of the more underrated series out there, and a personal favorite of mine. And of course, from its inspirational series, Raw Tunage, and into the series, you pretty much had a romance that, not at first, unless you watched the early Disney Channel episodes, but later on, during the syndicated run on the Disney Afternoon, you pretty much had the romance of Bonkers and Fawn play out in various episodes, whether it's the compilation episodes that were named after the new material that would be added in there, like or my cartoon, or it would be put in there just to kind of help progress the story. Pretty much the Bonkers and Fawn thing was, despite how some people might feel, I think at the end of Casabonkers was made official. It was made official, in my opinion, when he walks off at Fawn and tells and kind of holds her tight and says, "Hey, you're my one and only," and she doesn't reject. You don't see her just toss Bonkers over her shoulder, and that's how you end the episode. No, she's cool with it. She knows it. She's cool with it, and again, it's an official romance. It's not a visual in your face kind of deal, but when it has to be, you believe it. You truly believe it. Um, but yeah, Bonkers, to me, Bonkers to me had that with those characters. Now, what's interesting though is we have some fans on DeviantArt and various other parts of the internet that believe that there was something between Bonkers and Miranda Wright, who was his partner after Lucky, continuity-wise. If you watch the Disney Afternoon version, because of the fact that she seemed more not just tolerable of Bonkers, but more concerned for him. And, one could probably say that's true. There's no doubt about that. But but is there any evidence? Maybe a few moments here and there, but that's about it. So, people felt that there was something there between Miranda and Bonkers, but to me, I never really saw it that much. I even did a video asking that question because, like I said, some people have talked about it in various places. So there was that. But then we get to one of the big ones, in my opinion, Gargoyles, which a lot of people felt was Disney's answer to WB's Batman the Animated Series. And honestly, this series, despite whether or not you like the season 3 Goliath Chronicles, which aired on ABC, this series to me is probably the prime example of a romance you pretty much knew was going to happen right off the bat, no matter how you looked at it. And that was between Goliath and Eliza Maza. You knew something was going to happen between the two because throughout the series, they did a variety of things. In episodes, an episode where it was kind of Halloween themed, but the plot of it was Xanatos, who's the main villain, or was one of the main villains in the series, turns good guy later on. Xanatos is in this relationship with a former superhero character named Fox, and one of the things Xanatos gives her is this magical necklace, which unfortunately has an effect of turning her into a werewolf. So she turned. So that was one of the main plots of the series episode. But the other thing that was interesting is the Halloween themed episode was the first time we really got an indication of we thought of it. We thought maybe they would do it. They're gonna, and this episode here, this Halloween themed one, was more along the lines of, yeah, they're gonna do it, and that is Goliath and Elisa becoming a couple. And throughout the series, there were various times they would build upon it and build upon it and build upon it, and it wouldn't be until we get to Hunter's Moon that it's pretty much full blown realized it might come to fruition that these two are in love with each other, that the friendship that they developed has grown into something more, and now it's pretty much evident to the point both characters in their own way are or in their own way have admitted to it. They've admitted to it. We even see a freaking visual kiss on screen to end the episode, if not end the series. So yeah, there's that. And then speaking of romances, there's a romance that comes out of nowhere, but you kind of get the foundation built um, in Hunter's Moon. I don't know if you get it a little built before that, but you get it built mostly in Hunter's Moon. I mean, that's between Broadway and Goliath's daughter, Angela, who we meet in the second season because she's on this Avalon Island, which is kind of like stuck in time. So she's stuck. So he meets her there. Goliath meets her, I should say. But when she comes back with him, and Lexington and Broadway and Brooklyn see her, of course you would think, well, Brooklyn's kind of like this debonair, suave kind of guy. He would probably be the one that would get her. Nope. It's pretty much played up to the fact that Angela would rather fall for somebody that's more about who they are than what they look like. Kind of like I said earlier, like Mandy Rose and Otis right now in WWE. They did that here with Angela and Broadway. And you might say, well, how is that possible? Well, like I said, it's kind of the foundation's laid down a little bit because you have Broadway be concerned about Angela after she kind of recovers from nearly dying, and she immediately wants to go back out into action with the Goliath to, get revenge on the people that tried to kill her. And then you have the ending of the episode where she's like, man, I was just getting used to the clock tower. And Broadway's the first one that brings up, oh, this has got a lot. Oh, you're going to love it here at the castle. It's got a lot of other things and a much bigger library. Basically, building up on the fact that obviously she likes to read, get information, get up to date. And then it's in the first episode of the Goliath Chronicles that is pretty much confirmed. Yeah, these two are an item. They became an item. Much to the chagrin of Brooklyn, but what are you going to do? But but like I said, Gargoyles is a big example of that. Another example, in my opinion, is 101 Dalmatians, the series, not Dalmatian Street, which is a completely different deal, but 101 Dalmatians series to me, which is another favorite of mine, is a good example because even though it's not visually in your face, you get your romantic episodes. You get ships between characters you wouldn't expect. Like later on towards the end, they do because the primary thing about the 101 Dalmatian series was it was primarily consisted of 11-minute shorts. It was a 22-minute show consisted of two 11-minute shorts. Occasionally, you would get a 30-minute, half-hour story, but most of the times it would be two 11-minute shorts. So anyway, later on towards the end, we get a we get an 11-minute episode called My Sweet Moochie or something like that. And basically, we get a shipping, even though there's a little bit of a plan behind it that we find out later on about. But we get a romantic ship between Mooch, who's a dog, who's a dog that was there when the Dalmatians moved there with the owners, already established, if you will. We get a romance between Mooch and one of the main characters, Catpig, which is the runt of the litter. And it's like, okay, this is new. We didn't see this coming. And then, talk about strange romances. Here's another one. Rolly. He's another main character in the series. And again, this takes place in a short, 11-minute short. And basically, in this short, he falls in love with a pig. Yeah. He falls. As a matter of fact, let me see. No, they got to cast the character. Here's the characters. Let's see. I know we got them here. Where are they? No. Dumpling. That's who it is. Dumpling is a pig. And okay, Dumpling, his thing with her. It's established just like with hippopotamus or hoppopotamus and Wuzzles. She has a thing for Lucky. But this case, Lucky knows it. And Lucky's like, oh, okay, I get that. I think, I get that you have a thing for me, but I think we're better off just being BFs, best friends. That's it. Cool. Um, so like he's aware of it. But there's an episode. I'm gonna try to find it here. And apparently, the first season is going to be available on Disney Plus next month on June 19th. There's an episode. I'm gonna try to find it. Let me see. Let me see. Let me see. I'm trying to see how. I'm trying to see. Let's see. Come on, come on, come on. I know it's in here somewhere. But that basically, Rolly falls in love with Dumpling because basically there's a myth that goes around. There's a myth that goes around that says that if you see these certain things happen, a pig something going over the moon or something like that, you fall in love with the first female character that you see or whatever. And basically that's what happens with Rolly. I'm trying to see, if it's in here, something like that. Trying to see. Okay, it's called My Fair Moochie, the one with Catpig and Mooch. That's the one I'm looking for. See. Afternoon. Trying to see. Come on. I know the episode's here. But anyway, like I said, My Fair Moochie is that one episode. And let's see. I know it's in here somewhere. Anyway, like I said, Rolly falls in love um, with Dumpling, and it actually ends with them walking off together. Like I said, it actually ends with them walking off together, and kind of implying that something might be happening between the two. So yeah, there's that. Again, I'm trying to see where the episode is. It's sorry about that. It's there somewhere. Trying to see. I know it's in his. Oh, whatever. But anyway, like I said, he falls in love with her, spending too much time looking for it. Anyway, though, like I said, that's one primary example out of 101 Dalmatians, if you will. And then, of course, you have Lucky and Two Tone, who apparently, if you watch the movie, are the same litter. But if you look at it from a realistic standpoint, you can be of the same litter, but it's not going to matter if you go your own separate ways, and all that. And it's in Love Him or Flee Him. Love Him or Flee Him, where basically that's kind of, that romance, that shipping has become iconic. As a matter of fact, there are some examples of people wanting to see Lucky with Two Tone. Like I said, they wanted to see Lucky with Two Tone more than anyway, or more than anything, I should say. So yeah. So yeah, there's that episode. And what's okay, and speaking of, I'm gonna say this right now, and I've said this before. What's funny about this is when Love Him and Flee Him happened, when it came on the first time on ABC, I remember watching it, or I remember the title came on, and I said, instantly something told me it's gonna be a Lucky and Two Tone episode. And believe it or not, it is, or it turned out to be. Turned out to be a Lucky and Two Tone episode. And again, this was the first time the episode had come on, and I didn't think about that at first, thinking, "Oh, it's going to be a Lucky and Two Tone episode," and it turned out to be exactly that. It turned out to be exactly that. It turned out to be a Lucky and Two Tone episode, and it's going to be part of the first season when it shows up on Disney Plus next month. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So anyway, though, like I said, that's just an example. And Dumpling. That's the episode. And so yeah, that's the episode. And that's also part of the first season, which was part of ABC. But like I said, getting back to what I was saying, when Love and Fleam came on, again, the episode was just premiering for the first time. I had not nobody had seen it, and I thought the first thing that my mind when the title came on, I was like, it's gonna be Lucky and Two Tone, isn't it? It was. So that's that. But again, they're not the only series. Of course, you have series based on iconic franchise that's been talked about in or been showcased in those comic books is going to happen in some manner, and it does. But if you go back to the 90s, there is one show that a lot of people like, that Team Season, that's SEA3ION, is trying to get up and going again. And that's Sonic the Hedgehog, or Sonic SAT-AM, which was also on ABC, and probably the most iconic romance right in your face that really felt to me more real and legit because they were a foil for each other and each balanced each other out, was Sonic and Sally. There's no doubt that this is a romance that in the first season and mostly throughout the second season really was really being built up to become officially official at the end, because there was something between the two characters. You knew there was something between them, and I don't think there was any denying that whatsoever. I don't think there was no denying that you knew there was something between the characters. Um, but yeah, it was pretty much from beginning to end. You pretty much knew they were going to get together, whether you wanted to see it or not, and they did. But again, the way they did it though is they built it up. They built it up to the point that you had an idea that there was something between them in the third season. I mean, in the first season, you had your moments. And in the second season, boom, you had more evidence. You had more evidence play out that strongly indicated the two were going to be together. And the way it culminated, of course, was in the final episode where Sonic, of course, being himself, wants to deal with the situation we're in, by himself. But Sally's the one that has to stop him from talking and say, no, we are in this together. She puts the emphasis on we. And as in other words, saying, where you go, I go. So, yeah, it was. So, yeah, it was pretty. It's a pretty iconic relationship, to the point that even in the comics, which continued on still after the series ended, they really hammered home the fact in the comics that these two were together, these two were in love with each other, despite how many times they would break them off. They would put them back together, break them off, put them back together, da, da, da. They'd always basically indicate or find a way to say, yeah, these two are in love with each other. And that was it. That to me was it, when you think about it. That was it. And again, I understand people may not, heck, and here's the thing, I understand people don't like Sonic and Sally's relationship. They'd rather have Sonic with Blaze, or Sonic with Amy, or Sonic with someone else, or Sonic with Tangle, for all we know. But the truth is, this relationship between the two characters, in my opinion, helped carry the series, helped carry it not just in animation form, but in comic book form. I mean, heck, one of the how do I put this? One of the promotional videos that Team Season put out to promote the fact that they're um, working on this third season, is a trailer with Sonic and Sally. So doing the talking and all that. So there's stuff like that. If you will, there's stuff like that that pretty much indicate that they are together. They're an item. And you know, again, I understand. Like I said, I understand some people may not, like the pairing or anything because they feel this way or that way. But you have to admit that this relationship, no matter how you view it, has carried the franchise, helped carry it in some shape or form. Now, what's interesting about it, though, is even though that's a visual in your face example of a romance of shipping of characters, Sally wasn't the only one that Sonic would kind of have an attraction to. If you look at the series in a sense, you look at the comic book by Archie Comics, he did have moments, mostly in the comic book. He had like a small moment or so with Bunny. Not the evil version of him. That's one thing. That's a different thing. But there was a moment where Bunny was being assimilated by this character called Adam, where Sonic had to go rescue her and convince him, hey, she's not what you think she is. And that convinces him enough, the Adam character enough to release her. And what's one of the first things Bunny does? She kisses Sonic on the lips as a thank you for being her hero. So he has moments with Bunny. And if you look kind of closely in the animated series, especially the first season and somewhat in the second, you can tell that there's a bit of an attraction between the two, but nothing much. Like Bunny has respect for Sonic being with Sally, and she knows that, but you kind of see that there's something between the two. Heck, they even tease that she's attracted to Sonic in the comic in her first appearance in the comic, but that's about it. What they really become is like BFFs, like best buds, best friends. Like you got your back, I got your back, you got my back, kind of deal. So that's pretty much how it's played out between the two characters. Or played up, but yeah, like I said, that's how that's pretty much played up between the two characters. Now, speaking of Sonic, of course, you can fast forward into the 2000s, and of course, you got Sonic X, and pretty much Sonic X, in my opinion, being the anime. I think it's the only time Sega's going to say, "Okay, fine, you can ship Sonic with Amy. You can put him with Amy, or indicate that the friendship is becoming something more. So go ahead and do that." And it's also the first time they've put Tails in a romance with a character, an original character called Cosmo. And even though the Cosmo one, the one between Cosmo and Tails, ended bittersweetly, tragically, whatever, sacrificially, uh, yeah, it was a sad moment. There's no doubt. But still, it's kind of surprising that Sega allowed this all to happen in their series. It's really surprising. Um, Especially with Sonic and Amy, but again, it's really surprising they allowed that to happen. But I think it's because it's the anime, and they knew that one of the things that helps sell these kind of things is romance. So that's why they allowed it to happen. And so, in my opinion, they allowed it to happen. Now, when we fast forward even more, there's another series that recently just came to an end that, of course, you guys probably knew I was going to talk about. And that is, and let's just say, even though it may have taken a while, that then when you take a look at romance involved in this series, where basically the main heart and core of the series and theme of the series is friendship, I don't think anybody could deny that when they would imply romance into the series, that they did it in a way that was not only creative, but it was very, like I said, it wasn't just something that was creative, but it was very innovative in a sense. I'll give you an example of what I mean. You see, one of the primary things that was always blown off a lot was a romance between a romance uh, for the main six or main seven or main eight to be involved in. Like they were kind of off limits. So the next best thing to do was to go with characters outside of that group. And they did that. They would do that. They did it with characters like Cranky Doodle and Matilda Donkey. They did it later on, especially towards the end, with Big Mac and Sugar Bell. And there were other times as well, I believe. There were other times as well. But as far as the main group itself goes, there was never really any indication of romance that would happen. That is until you get to the spin-off, Equestria Girls. Now, here's the thing. I know some people will say, well, Brian, you've been an advocate of asperity the whole time. You've talked about it the whole time. That was there, wasn't it? Yes, it was. I'm not denying that. That was probably the only example of true shipping within the group. But here's the thing. There are many people, many fans that feel Spike and Rarity are not official because of the fact that besides Secret of My Excess, Best Gift Ever, various moments in season 9, various moments in season 8, various moments throughout seasons 3 and 5, 6 and 7, throughout all that, they would say, throughout all those moments and stuff and arcs, that there was nothing really to imply afterwards that, oh, these two are an item now. Despite even Friendship is Forever's first episode, where Rarity's discussing with Twilight her relationship with Spike, changing over the years, but being very special still, and Spike's reaction being what it was. People still kind of debate and say, nah, ain't nothing there. It's nothing really official. It's just this and that. You have moments here and there, arcs here and there, but nothing. Nope, not happening. So, despite that, despite that, um, the real, I think overall, if anybody was to agree, the real first indication of a romance involved with MLP FIM was with Equestria Girls, the spinoff. And the attraction developed between Twilight while she's in human form and Flash Sentry, who's in human form, and the human version of Flash Sentry. And what's ironic about this is we, at the end of the movie, meet the pony version of Flash Sentry. So, yeah, we meet the pony version of Flash Sentry in there as well. But the point I'm getting at, ladies and gentlemen, is this. Equestria Girls was the first real indication. As a matter of fact, it was promoted as such. It was promoted as being the first. It was basically promoted heavily as being the MLP series that would actually try to tackle that, and go down that route. But again, like I said, I know some people would say, well, MLP FIM did it with Spike and Rarity. And again, I'm not denying that. I'm not saying that they didn't. The point is, though, despite how you feel about it, Equestria Girls was like the first indication, and it would continue on throughout the series. It would continue on throughout the series. Heck, even when Twilight returned back home and would only communicate with Sunset via journal, they basically played up the fact that a human counterpart, Sidetwi as they call her, fell for somebody else. And that Sunset was getting back with Flash because it's indicated that her and Flash had a thing going beforehand, and now it was starting to resurface. Heck, they even have something. I mean, heck, they even kept the Lyra and Bonbon thing going in the human world with the human versions of them, and they even made male equivalents of them later on. And heck, they even played up a romance LGBTQ wise between the human Rarity and human Applejack. So you could definitely tell that Equestria Girls played more with it than Friendship is Magic. Not saying Friendship is Magic, like I said, did not play with it, especially later on. I'll touch upon it. Because it's ironic when Nicole Dubuque took over the series that we started seeing more of an emphasis on romance. I mean, yeah, Big Mac and Sugar Bell, Big Mac and Sugar Bell getting together in season 7 was under Megan McCarthy's uh, production, executive production, but you could definitely tell when somebody else is going to be taking over because even though Megan McCarthy was still the executive producer, you can tell the reins were being passed on to Nicole from Megan, just like Lauren was passing them on to Megan around season 2. So you can kind of see that. You can kind of see that happening, if you will. So when it came to season 8, I was really genuinely surprised at the, I wouldn't say heaviness, but the strong visual implication of shipping in Friendship is Magic, especially, like I said, with the reintroduction of recontinuation or going back to Spike and Rarity after it had a cooling off period, where, like I said, you had your moments here and there. Now all of a sudden, boom, it's suddenly back out of nowhere. Especially with the what is it, the breakdown episode, which was the second of the 3 Sugar Bell Big Mac episodes, and it's in this episode where pretty much Spike's reading off a poem for Hearts and Hoof Day that he wrote for Rarity, and you want anybody, and if you want to hear how some people feel about the Sparity deal, especially not being in favor of it, just check out Miss Anthropony's review of it, and you'll kind of see exactly how some people feel about it in a negative way. No offense to Map, but because that's his opinion, but you'll kind of see what I mean. But again, it's ironic that when Nicole Dubuque took over, all of a sudden you get this brought back. Then you have Bolt Down, which is a Sparity episode in a sense. You have, Spike's, quest to not only get Rarity's cutie mark or name from whatever member of the main group has it in a trade, so he can get her a gift, and thus results in his version of True Gift of Giving, which is a serenade romantic love ballad to Rarity from him. It's like, and the result at the end is her kissing him on the cheek. It's like, come on. You can't say that when Nicole took over that romance wasn't strongly implied, or she wasn't a fan of romance of any kind, that she didn't want to see it finally show up in the final seasons of Friendship is Magic, because she did. She did. Hmm? I don't know about that one, Bugs, but inside my finger hit the mic there, or my thumb hit the mic. But like I said, you can't tell me that Nicole probably wasn't a fan of romance and wanted to try to test it out, because she did. I mean, heck, even as earlier in the series, you had fans looking at potential ships of Carmel and Applejack, Tenderhoof and Applejack, um, Soren and Rainbow Dash, and then later on Flash Magnus and Rainbow Dash. Heck, one of the ships that was pretty much implied at the end of the series that occurred was Applejack and Rainbow Dash, and fans saw this coming, or was hoping this would happen since the beginning. Heck, Fluttershy and Discord getting together, fans were hoping about that. I know Disney Fanatic was hoping for that, and it's implied that happened. Heck, there's some implication that Spike and Rarity happened in the future, just by the fact that you have them close to each other, especially towards the end in the final song. It's like there's too much evidence, implied wise, if you will, or implication wise, to kind of say that something romantically didn't happen. But that's the thing about shipping. It's one of those things that but again, like I said, that's one thing about shipping. You wouldn't think it's going to happen between certain characters, but when somebody else takes over, it does. It does and then it ends up becoming something unexpected. You start seeing it occur. Heck, when Smolder got introduced, or even Ember before her, people were saying, there you go. Spike can finally be with somebody more appropriate for him because they're dragons. But even though you had Smolder and Spike come like BFs, even though he was like a teacher or an assistant teacher and all that, and the same with him and Ember, it's like, nothing really happened. Nothing was indicated. In fact, if anything, it was indicated that something happened between Ocellus and Ember in the future. I mean, speaking of the young student six, it's played up in the final season and even in the last episode. Yona, who's a yak, and Sandbar, who's a pony, they got together. They even teased maybe Gallus and Silverstream. So it's like, there you go. Even whether or not you agree with it or you don't. But yeah, a lot of ships did happen. Like I said, it's ironic that when Nicole took over for Megan, these occurred. I mean, especially in the future timeline, you have big, Pinkie Pie and Cheese Sandwich, you have Big Mac Sugar Bell, you have the indication of Applejack and Rainbow Dash, you have Fluttercord, possibly Rarity and Spike. You have a lot of these, and it's like no one saw them coming. No one thought this would happen, but yet here you go. Here you go. Again, I understand. Again, that's just an example of how shipping of characters visually and implied, especially with a series like Friendship is Magic, are played out. It all depends basically on who's writing the stuff and how they feel about it. I mean, fans themselves can influence the outcome as well, which obviously we've seen throughout the series like MLP, FIM, and other series out there. I mean, and sometimes they don't. Like I said, Disney Fanatic, who's a Fluttercord shipper, was probably happy that it's indicated that they did officially get together. But it's disappointed Spike and Applejack didn't get together because they go off that romance from, I think, was it season 4 episode of Spike. It's called Spike at Your Service, and they go off that episode. So, yeah. The thing is, shipping of characters visually and implied in various series like My Little Pony Friendship is Magic is nothing new. It's really, really nothing new. I mean, not to throw it in there as much, but if it wasn't for Space Jam, we wouldn't have had Lola and Bugs. We wouldn't have. Space Jam pretty much built the relationship of Lola and Bugs. It basically established the attraction. It established the moment where Lola realized Bugs was the one for her because of who he is. And it continued on in comics and little web shorts, games, and then really blossomed when the Looney Tunes show came around and they decided to do a complete 180 with Lola and turn her from being what she was in Space Jam to becoming the Kristen Wiig character that she became in in the Looney Tunes show that people fell in love with. And eventually the romance between her and Bugs becoming official. Because the version of Bugs in this series was like, yeah, I don't want to be around you, Lola. You're a little too cuckoo. But it wouldn't be till later on where, Lola becomes obsessed with Daffy while she's teaching Daffy to find a way to approach Tina, who's an original made character, that Bugs finally just says something that he didn't think he would say. And of course, this Lola, being a wacky like kind of Lola, is always prepared. And it's like, hey, so you found a way to do it, and you did. Now, they did kind of mellow a little bit, not much. They mellowed out Lola just a bit later on, especially when they did Run Rabbit Run, which was based off the Looney Tunes show. But yeah, yeah, it wasn't for Space Jam, we wouldn't have had that romance occur. And what's funny is when you look at the new DuckTales series, you can tell that there's a romance blossoming between certain characters. You know that obviously Gander D, this version of Gander D may turn good, or Gizmo Doug Fenton of this version is going to get somebody else because we see him carrying another female in the promotional season 3 poster. We don't know if that's his mama, which is basically the Disney version of the young Marvel MCU version of Aunt May in the new Spider-Man movies. We don't know if that's their answer to that, or like I said, that's a new love interest. But we do know that it might be something between Gander and Fenton happening. We know they're building something between Webby and one of the nephews. I think it's Webby and Dewey, or Webby and Louie, or Huey, something like that. One of them. She's building something between them there. Although that's being built there. I don't know. Again, I don't know who it is that she's going with, whether it's Louie or Huey or Dewey, one of them. But they're teasing obviously something between Webby and one of the nephews, and so much more. Heck, we got a grown-up Molly and a grown-up Kit showing up in Tailspin later on. And we don't know whether or not they're romantically involved. So it's going to be really interesting, what we get. Okay, it's called Rabbit's Run. Sorry about that. But yeah, we don't know what we're going to get. But the thing is, if there's some kind of implication or visual in your face kind of evidence that something's going on or is going to happen, so be it. I'm cool with it, and I know a lot of people are cool with it. There's no doubt about that. I think everybody's pretty much cool with whatever happens. But when you get down to it, as we close this up, when you get down to it, this is something, shipping of characters, like I said at the beginning, has been going on for decades. So no matter how you feel about it. As far as the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, shipping of characters, visually or implied, has always been part of the animated series. Heck, one series that I have tagged or hashtagged here is Scooby-Doo. Everybody knows that Scooby-Doo, and for some odd reason, you usually would have, Fred and Daphne, Velma and Shaggy. Mystery Incorporated, which was one of the later interpretations, more darker interpretations, and probably one of the better interpretations, kind of plays on that. But what they also play on is a moment between Shaggy and Daphne, even though they're under the influence of something, which is a callback, in my opinion, to the all new Scooby Doo and Scrappy Doo show, which later on became in the second season the new Scooby Doo Mysteries, which later on became the 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo. Um, basically, basically, it's played upon. There's a moment, like I said, that's played upon that moment between Daphne and Shaggy and Mystery Incorporated. Even though under the influence of something, is done because it plays upon the the early to mid '80s series. Those three series, or yeah, the three series there, which had Shaggy, Daphne, Scooby, and Scrappy, and was pretty much indicated throughout that Shaggy and Daphne had become a couple. So, there you go. Now, I have not yet seen Scoob, so I don't know if maybe, I don't know if they play on the fact that maybe Shaggy might be ending up with Daphne. We don't know. So, I'll have to watch it later. But like I said, there's indications like that as well. Been going on for years. Heck, Reboot, which was a CGI series back in the 90s, pretty much visually didn't just imply, but visually in your face, kind of gave you the two main characters, which was Bob and Dot, I think. You know, it visually showed them being together. It visually showed them being an item, and sometimes it would apply, and sometimes it would be implied that they were an item. Sometimes it would be visual, like I think later on, and it would be implied. So, really interesting stuff. I mean, you even have shows like Biker Mice from Mars, even the later version of it, which was a soft continuation of something between Vinny, who's a mouse Martian, and their Charlene, Charlie Girl, as they call her, especially the way she reacts to the return, Vinny's return in the continuation back in the mid 2000s in that series. You have Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa that play upon this, you know, with Moo Marshall and what's her name again? I can't think of her name. Let me look it up here. Lily. Yeah, Lily Bovine, between Moo Marshall and Lily Bovine. You had a romance between the Dakota Ood, and Calamity Kate. So you had romance in there. There's no doubt. Oh, with that, even with that series, if you know what I'm saying. So and there are many others like TMT, of course, with April and Casey, and even Raphael and Mona Lisa, depending on the versions that you like of that. So there was a lot of series that played upon it visually and implied wise throughout. And it's one thing, again, we have to look at and realize that no matter how we feel about certain characters being implied, officially, implied, and that what I'm trying to say is we got to look at it this way. It doesn't matter how we feel about characters being officially, visually, and officially put together, or officially implied, or teased. Needs to be, or officially implied that they're together in some way, or teased that there might be something going on between them. We have to look at the fact that it's done for a reason. It's done to get you to. It's done to get people. It's done to get people watching, and talking, and invested. That's why it's done. That's why shipping of characters, visually and implied in various series out the decades they've been around, is done. It's done to get you invested. It's done to get you talking. It's done to get you watching. And that's the truth. That's the absolute truth. No matter how you look at it, no matter how you look at it, that is the absolute, truth, in my opinion. that you could feel one way about it, but in the end, it's going to be something completely beyond your control. Well, I wouldn't say beyond your control, but it's just something that you just have to kind of, live with, watch, and maybe hope they might do something different to kind of change things up and make things more intriguing, if you know what I'm saying. So, anyway, though, guys, that's pretty much all I'm gonna say. I know this has been going on for about an hour and 41 minutes, so I do apologize, but I thank you all for watching on this Saturday morning. Just something I've been wanting to do since Sunday evening, but didn't have the chance to do it because of various reasons. But thank you all for watching, and hope you have a good rest of the day. And I am out. God bless. Take care. Peace. Comment down below what your thoughts are. And thank you all for watching. And again, have a good Saturday. And I am out. Peace. God bless. As and that's all I'm going to say. So, but again, think about what I had to say and give your own thoughts down below.